Uh, what's it like being back at Auburn and in this role now?
Well, first of all, it's been great to be back here. I've seen a lot of people that I haven't seen in a long time. When you're in this coaching business, a lot of times you move different places, and I guess it's been since 1993, 94 since I've had a chance to come back here and coach. So it's been really good. I'm very thankful to Coach Freeze for giving me the opportunity. I think it's a great group of coaches that I have an opportunity to work with. Players have been very good, since I've been here. The energy's been good, the effort's been good. We got a lot to learn, but that's why we coach them. And but it's been a good time since I've been back.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of the staff.
Right.
How has that transition been, and I guess starting with Freeze at the top?
Well, first of all, I've said this before. Coach Freeze's record speaks for itself. He's been very successful. I've had a lot of respect for him for a long time. He's proven that he can win at every level he's ever coached. I think he's a great evaluator of talent, and I think he does a good job of motivating the people, not only the players, but everybody in this organization. And I think that's the key to making sure that everybody's on the same page. There's no doubt that he has a standard, and our job is to make sure that every one of these players and the people that we're around live up to that standard every day.
Talk about your room, the safety room, how you feel about it. I know you haven't gone in, obviously, a lot to learn because you haven't gone in pads yet.
Right. I like again, I mentioned the effort. I think the guys have been very receptive to what we're teaching. I'm a firm believer in when you teach young men, you teach them, first of all, you teach them what to do, you teach them how to do it, and you teach them why it's important to do it that way. And the first thing is to learn how to learn. And then you have expectations, you have standards that you set. And our job as coaches is to make sure that those players can match up to those standards. Our players have bought into that. Schemes are schemes. Those change. I've enjoyed working with Coach Durkin and what he's brought to the table. But our job is to make sure these players learn, first of all, how to do things the right way. I just believe, a team is going to be, you're going to be judged on how you play, not what you do necessarily from a scheme standpoint, but how you do it. And I think our guys have bought into that. I think Coach has done a really good job of evaluating talent since he's been here in recruiting. We've got some young guys, and we're going to expect some young guys to be able to contribute and play. But it's like I told him, I wake up every day wishing I was young, so that's a good thing. That's there's playtime doesn't have an age limit. It doesn't. If you prepare the right way, and you know how to compete, and you play with a competitive edge, then you'll have an opportunity to play. What we try to focus on right now is don't worry about those results. Just worry about getting better every day. And I think the biggest thing for young players is they want to look and see out there a year from now or 6 months from now, am I going to be the starter? Am I going to do this? Don't worry about that. Worry about getting better every day. And that's our job as coaches, is to give them those tools to make them get better.
As you mentioned, you've got quite a few young players. Have you seen anybody stepping up and taking leadership roles?
I think some of the new guys that have come in, Caleb Harris, Kinsley, those guys have flashed. They're like sponges. I think but even the guys that have been here, have kind of just said, this is a clean slate. We're starting from ground zero, and we're working that way. So in my mind, just because I'm new, all these guys are young. That's the way I look at it. Things are new from them, but I think that I think just overall as a group, I see some good things and some good characteristics that you look for. But again, we got a long way to go before we can sort things like that out.
Charles, did you know DJ before he came here, and what's it been like working with him?
I've never worked with DJ, but I have known him throughout the years. He worked with Travaris Robinson for a long time, and T-Rob and I worked together and are very close. He just always raved about him. We coached against each other. He was at Florida when I was at Florida State, so we went against each other a few times, and always had, first of all, I had a respect for how his players played. He's very intelligent, very smart. I think, he has a belief system in how you do things, and I think when you are around coaches like that, they have a philosophy and they have a belief system. They're pretty solid. But I'm grateful that I'm getting the opportunity to work for him, because he's a guy that, in this business, there's always people out there that you see and watch and you say, I'd like to have an opportunity to work with them one day, and I'm thankful for that.
Coach, you mentioned standards. From your perspective, what is the Auburn standard that was instilled in you from Coach Dye, and how do you plan to continue to implement that?
Well, the first thing is, the standard is to be the very best you can be on an everyday basis. I mean, that's what I think, people, even players, even students, some fans, sometimes we want to see, we just want to see the result. We all want the result, but it's what you do on a day-to-day basis that makes you who you are. So it's, how you get up in the morning, what your attitude's like, how I approach off-season work. It's everything you do, because everything you do creates habits. And you're going to play on Saturday with your habit. You don't play the way you want to play. You play the way you prepare to play. So you've got to make sure that you do that all the time. We won SEC championships when I was here, 3 of them, and we never talked about, we're going to win the SEC championship. We always talked about what we had to do to win it, and we focused on that. We took things one thing at a time. But I think building championship people is the first thing that you have to do before you can become a champion.
What do you think 2024 players would have thought about late 1980s spring practice?
Well, you and I both know that in the fall camp, it's a little bit different, and the rules are different now. But it was the one thing about it, we could always find out, who was going to be there when it got rough, because there was nothing that you ever faced in an opponent that you had never faced in practice. And then that's the thing that I always felt like. And I've been able to coach with some good coaches over the years, and being able to coach with Coach Freeze, I mean, he has that same philosophy, the same standard of how to do things. So I just believe that when you do things the right way, you get the right result.
Jaron's been a guy that's played a lot of football, at Texas. What does he bring to this room as somebody, folks around here haven't got to see him play?
Well, I think what you just said, he has a lot of experience. He's played in a lot of big games. He's, proven that he can make plays in big-time situations. Y'all know, I mean, when you play in the SEC, I told our guys the other day, and we were talking about communication, I said, listen, when you play in the SEC, you play in front of a packed crowd every week. All right. So you talking to each other like we're talking right now. No, we got to be able to signal and everything. But I think having played in those venues and playing in those games like that, having that experience, all right, makes you better. All of us, everybody in this room, we are better, we are more educated because of our experiences. So the more experience you have, that helps you as a player. I think the biggest adjustment for him just like it is for a coach coming in coaching for a new head coach or a new coordinator, is learning how we do things. And, we do things a certain way, and, you got to make sure that you learn how to do those things. So, but he's had a great attitude, that's why we brought him here, because we felt like he could help us.
How valuable is his versatility too, the ability to play nickel, play safety, do those things?
Well, me as a defensive back coach, I think the number one thing that you have to do in today's football is be multiple, because, first of all, they're good coaches on the other side of the ball, and they're going to be able to figure out ways to get people matched up on somebody just because you're a lineman or whatever. So I think being multiple is one of the number one things that we look for in recruiting and we look for in players. But yes, being able to play nickel, being able to play safety, that gives you a lot of, it creates more opportunities for you as a play caller to be able to do certain things, when you have confidence that you can do those things. Jaren's been put in some of those situations before in his career, and, hopefully we'll be able to see, with our own eyes throughout spring and throughout fall camp, how will he adjust to what we're asking him to do.
Charles, you're one of the rare people who can see both sides, but have been on both sides. What's the biggest cultural difference between coaching here and when you were coaching at Alabama?
I mean, listen, you grew up in this state. It's like I tell these players, every day that you come to represent a tradition of people that have come before you, and that's the one thing the thing I'll say we have in common at both places. We all live in a great state. We're windows to the rest of the world, our universities. But there is no greater rivalry in sports, period, than that game. None. And, I believe that since I was old enough to watch a game. I think it was Bama Punt was the first one I remember growing up. But, they have a standard there that they want to accomplish, but we have our standard. And I just believe this, and you asked me about how we used to think, we don't worry about what other people do at other schools. We worry about what we do. If we're the best Auburn that we can be, that'll be good enough.
Was it weird for you to wear crimson, wear?
Yeah, I won't get into media stuff on that, but listen, I was grateful to be able to be around some really good players and good young men. And there were a lot of good people. There are a lot of good people on both sides, that are very competitive, that love their universities. Listen, I love this university, and, I want to try to help make Auburn be the best Auburn that it can be.
Charles, you've been recruiting the state for a long time, a lot of contacts. What's it like walking in schools with the AU on your chest now?
Well, that's, I've had a lot of coaches tell me, they're like, hey, you're finally coming in here with the right shirt on. And, listen, when you recruit, what I've enjoyed about recruiting more than anything over the years is the relationships that you build. And and I know people say that recruiting has changed, and it has. There are different things that we have going on in amateur athletics now that we didn't have 30 years ago. But the relationship building is still going to be the same. You're still going to have to build relationships with the high school coaches, with the parents, with the players. But it has been really nice, going back out there. And listen, I think every person that I can't imagine a guy that played here, right, that wouldn't be honored to come back and have an opportunity to coach here. It's just that's something, you grow up as a kid, that's something that you would always want to be able to do. Maybe I should have had some other goals in coaching, but one of my main goals when I left here, in 1993 was to have an opportunity to come back and coach one day. So for me, that's been a great thing, and there are a lot of great Auburn people out there that are in coaching that I come across in recruiting that I think they're very happy about that too.
When you were talking about experience a little while ago, I guess Caleb's probably the most experienced guy as far as playing time at Auburn. What have you seen from him?
Caleb's done a good job of, he's very smart, very conscientious. He's learning a little bit. There are some nuances that are different. I mean, the fundamentals of defensive football don't change. I mean, it's like I've tried to explain to them. It's like if you're in the NFL, you may play 7 years with the Steelers and then get traded to the Packers. Well, they're going to call things different at this place than they did here. But if you understand concepts and understand how things tie in together, then that'll make your progress and you will process things better. I think Caleb's done a good job of that. In fact, he was, in my office just a few minutes ago. I mean, he comes by and checks in, and I think the thing I try to emphasize to these guys: listen, no matter what you've done in the past, it doesn't matter, good, bad, indifferent. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do on what happens tomorrow. You got to go to work every day and work that way, and I think he sees that and understands that. But he's been good to have to be around. I enjoy him. He's a great kid, or a great young man. Let me say that. I say great kid. He's a great young man, and hopefully, we see him progress throughout the spring.
Second year guys always take that jump. What have you seen from T. Love and Sylvester, then even T. Scott that you get maybe a little bit at the nickel too?
Yeah. Well, and I've known these guys. I knew them throughout their high school careers and recruiting. I mean, all those guys have a skill set, and that's the unique thing about people. People have different tools and different skill sets. They all do. I think, you speak of Sylvester, I mean, he's been all in. I mean, he's wide open. I think he's processing things. I think for the second year, a lot of times the game slows down for guys. That's why you see a lot of them improvement. And they have a chance to train for a year and, get used to what, college football is about. T. Love's done some nice things. I mean, he's a big guy that can move, and, it's different when you get in game type situations and scrimmage situations where you see, sometimes guys look better when they're in shorts and helmets, and sometimes guys look better in practice, and then all of a sudden in the game they're the most productive guys. So watching those guys, grow and do that. T. Scott, I think what you mentioned, he being multiple, I think he can play a lot of different things. But I think his work ethic has been good. He's been really focused since we started, so I'm anxious to watch these young guys.
Charles, you mentioned being here in '93. What memories do you have of the undefeated season, especially Florida here at home, the interceptions, Pat Nix coming off the bench?
Well, I can. First of all, I can remember during spring practice, I was thinking, we're not going to win many games. I remember that. That's what I thought. I mean, I'm like, oh boy. And then there were a few things about that season. I can remember Fred Smith tearing his ACL during fall camp. And Fred was a really good player. And we took a little wide receiver named Dale McGee and moved him to corner. And he had never played corner. But one thing he was competitive and he could run. And we moved him over there, and Coach Hall said, we got to teach him how to play corner because we're going to need him. And we weren't that deep in the secondary. We didn't have a lot of depth. But the ones we had that played, we had Calvin. We had to move Chris Schelling to corner after Fred got hurt. But we had, Calvin Jackson at one corner, Chris Schelling at the other. We had B-Rob at a safety, Otis Mounds at a safety. And then when we played nickel, when we went to 5 defensive backs, by the time we played Florida, Dale McGee was in the game. I mean, he was playing. He was starting, but the interception against Florida, I'll never forget, they had moved the ball up and down the field, and I can't remember the name of the blitz, but Coach Hall called a blitz. I was in the press box with Coach Hall, and he calls the blitz. Calvin picks it off, returns it. I mean, that might have been one of the loudest times that I can just remember, in a game. But I can remember in between series, I just kind of asked Coach. I said, what'd you see to call that? He said, we're trying to make a play, and Calvin did, and that kind of turned our season right there. But it was a good group of guys. Very competitive. We were very complimentary on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. We complemented each other very well. And then, it might not have been the most talented team that ever played here, but they played well together. And, no environment shook them. It didn't matter where you played. Didn't matter. I mean, you could have taken them anywhere and played. They just played the same way. So that's what I remember.
And then you mentioned playing for Coach Dye. Is there any time you catch yourself maybe saying something he would say, or when you're talking to a player, maybe refer back to some lessons you learned from him?
Yeah, I mean, I probably say more things that Coach said than any. I mean, I've had players and other coaches. T-Rob used to tell me all the time. He said, "Man, you sound, you're saying something that Coach Dye would say." But there's so many of those things, that he said over the years. I can remember, pregame speeches that he gave. He always talked about there are 4 or 5 plays in a game that are going to affect the outcome of the game. All right, the key to football is you don't know when they're going to happen. So if you're not playing hard every snap, there's no guarantee that you're going to make that play. And that has stuck with me forever, because that will never change. There will be 4 or 5 plays in the game, no matter the score of the game, that are going to affect the outcome of the game. And, that's why playing with effort and how you play every snap is so important. Other things about, but just not necessarily football, just, life in general, of how you handle things and how you handle adversity. Those things are what I remember of Coach, and what we all learned from him, and that's why a lot of the guys that he coached are so successful today. There are a lot of good coaches out there today that probably got. I know they wouldn't be coaching if it weren't for Pat Dye. I'd probably be one of them.
Thank you, sir.
All right.